I cannot believe it, but I've had over 40 5-star reads in 2023. Welcome to my booktube channel, Jack and the Book Stack, where I talk about a wide variety of book genres and the bookish lifestyle. And what I mean by a wide variety of genres, you can see represented on the shelves behind me, because I have pulled every single book that I own that I've read in 2023 for this display, and I am overwhelmed. In this video, I want to talk about all the books I read this year that I rated 5 stars. And honestly, I'm not that picky when it comes to ratings. That's why I have over 40 5-star reads. I pretty much start every book out as a 3-star, like that's my average, and then it goes up or down depending on how I feel about it. So I'm not that picky. Sometimes I rate it 5 stars because I had a great reading experience, I had an amazing time, but I might even recognize that it's not a perfect book. Or on the other side, maybe I didn't have the best reading experience, but I recognize that it is a masterpiece. So I don't know, there's no rhyme or reason. We just have fun here on BookTube. Additionally, if I want to get really picky about it, several of these I rated 4.5 or 4.75 stars. I just rounded them up to 5 stars on GoodReads. But again, I'm not going to be that picky about it. That high of a rating means I loved it and I want to share it with you because maybe you can find a new book to check out. While I'm going through these 5-star reads, I'm going to tell you the genre they are, a little bit about them maybe, but I don't want to dive too much into the plot, but I do want to tell you why I love the books. And while I'm going through this, please drop a comment down below with a book that you read this year that really surprised you. I want to know something that you read and you completely were blown away, you loved it, even though you really weren't expecting to. Going in chronological order of what I read this year, my first 5-star reads were part of the same trilogy, and that is The Assassin's Apprentice and The Royal Assassin. This is part of the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb, and I loved this very slow burn, in-depth character study. I loved following Fitz when he was young. I think we started at 6 years old and we follow him to adulthood. This is a fantasy. It's part of a much larger series called The Realm of the Elderlings. It's a whole saga that I am working through, but this really kicked things off on the right foot for me. I enjoyed Robin Hobb's writing style, even if she tormented me emotionally. These two were 5-star reads. Next up is the horror book Mary by Nat Cassidy. I loved this Carrie-inspired tale about a woman who is entering menopause. It was really horrific, both in the social commentary, but also the things that were going on. This was a chilling good time and an easy 5 stars. Next up is Guild, which is book 1 in the Plated Prisoner series. This is a romantasy series with kind of like a Midas inspired background to it, where everything he touches turns to gold, right? I rated this one 5 stars. I loved it, and it was largely because I saw the potential that the story and the series could go, and I was so into it. I really liked this creative spin. Unfortunately, this was the only 5-star read from that series. It progressively got worse and worse for me, but the first one was fantastic. The next 5-star read I had was the contemporary romance Archer's Voice. I loved the representation of this book. I also loved our romantic leads, how they complemented each other, how they made each other better, and I really enjoyed Archer's journey. Next up is a themed read, because your girl Jack loves a good theme, and that is the novella Four Leaf. Now this is very spicy, so you have to go into it with the right expectations. It's also very short, so you can't expect really fleshed out characters or an intricate plot, but for what this set out to do, it really achieved. It achieved on the spice, with a very specific kink involved. I enjoyed the theme, I liked the characters and the relationship they had. The next 5-star is The Gentleman's Book of Vices. This was a very creative male-male romance. It was very spicy. It was set in, I believe, Victorian England, and I read this and I was tense, expecting something horrible to happen, but it was just kind of a warm and fuzzy, albeit spicy, tale about a man who is the biggest fan of this erotic author, and he gets to meet him. The next book also had me really tense while I was reading it, but that's because it's a thriller, but more specifically, an erotic thriller. I'm talking about The Book of the Most Precious Substance. And this is a subgenre that I haven't read before, but I am really looking for more recommendations. If you have them, please drop them in the comments down below. But this was such a unique experience, very spicy, yet very thrilling. We have this mystery going on. We have this chase going on. So I really enjoyed this. This was a very unique read, and that's why I rated it 5 stars. Next up was Flawless by Elsie Silver. This is book 1 in her Chestnut Springs series. I love this contemporary romance, particularly because of the banter. I have never read a bull rider romance before, so that was interesting, but it was really this family and all the banter they have. You know how a lot of us say we like found family? Well, they're not found because they are biological family, most of them, but I love their bond, their relationship, their banter, the banter between the romantic leads. This was such a feel-good time, and of course very spicy as well. Zero spice, but all vibes. Next up is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. This was so eerie and atmospheric, and I really wasn't expecting the tone that I got out of this. This was a very easily digestible classic read. So glad I read this. Next up is The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi, which I was expecting to enjoy because it is a nautical fantasy, and I love nautical fantasy settings. But I loved Amina al-Sarafi. She is a powerhouse character over the age of 40, which I really appreciated. She is a strong mother, she is a strong warrior, and I loved how she was represented. I think it was a very powerful figure for that age, that she could be strong, strategic, caring. She has an amazing found family, an amazing career, and she's also sexual, which I really loved seeing that. Next up is Murder Your Employer, which I don't know how to categorize this in terms of genre. It's kind of fiction, it's kind of a mystery, but it is 100% satire. And that is a love that was truly unlocked in 2023. I love the tone of a satire in books, and this one where people are wronged by their employer and go to a school, so you have a school setting, but a school that teaches them how to get revenge on that employer was amazing. I love the concept of this. I love the tone of it. It was very entertaining. The next 5-star read I had was another book from the Chestnut Springs series, the contemporary romance. Again, I love the banter between our characters and the relationship between the family members. This one in particular has a grumpy sunshine, which is one of my favorite tropes in romance. And our grump was not an a-hole. It's just that he was very laser focused on what he was set out to do, which was being a single dad. The next 5-star read was Cupid's Peak. This is another very spicy novella. It is set around Valentine's Day, so that is the holiday theme of this one. And I enjoyed the exhibitionism in this one. It was very, very spicy. I loved our romantic leads. Again, very, very short, so don't expect a lot of plot. Don't expect the characters to be really in-depth. But what this book set out to do, it delivered. I enjoyed the theme, I enjoyed the spice. It had a little bit of plot to it, which I liked. Not just spice, I like a little bit of plot involved. So that's why this one was 5 stars. Next up is the thriller Confessions. This is a fantastic revenge story. Very, very creative. Had a lot of POVs, which took me a little bit to get used to. That's not my favorite style that authors do, but very intricate. I love a good revenge story. So this one kept me very engaged and turning the page to see what would happen next. Just Like Home was a horror book that really caught me by surprise. Now, I love a good haunted house story, so I went into it thinking I would enjoy it, but the ratings for this book on GoodReads rank this as one of the least popular books on my read list or my to-be-read list before I read it. So I really didn't expect it to be 5 stars, but it was. I loved the haunted house setting. I love that our main character is going back home to the site where her father was taken away by the police because he was a convicted serial killer and torturer. Going into In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune, I was kind of torn if I would enjoy this. Firstly, I love TJ Klune, one of my favorite authors for like cozy fantasy stories, but this one is marketed as a sci-fi with robots, which is not my thing. I will never gravitate towards that genre. But I'm so glad I read this because the tone of this book was so funny, so hilarious. The characters, the supporting characters of this really made the experience for me. And this just brought so much levity to my mood and my life at the time. It just made me happy. It was a really, really good story. The plot was fine, but it's really the characters of this one and the humor. Oh my gosh, the humor. The next 5-star read was a nonfiction. It was Mating in Captivity. This is really about how to keep the magic alive in long-term relationships, how to not take each other for granted, how to keep that passion alive. It was very insightful. I liked the advice it had and the studies and how different distractions can really impact our relationships long-term. Very insightful. I enjoyed this. The Murder of Roger Ackroyd is a mystery by Agatha Christie, and this is part of the Poirot series. I adore that arrogant, conceited little detective, and this one blew me away. The twist and the whodunit I did not see coming. I always enjoy these stories, but this one was definitely top of the list for me. We are at the halfway point of the list. Number 20 and number 21 are part of the same series. The Alloy of Law and Shadows of Self by Brandon Sanderson are part of the Mistborn Era 2 series. And I read these back to back and I was blown away. I really love the characters. One of them, I think it was Steris, is a character that I relate to more than any other character I've read. So I really enjoyed her. I loved Wax and Wayne. I loved the banter and the sarcasm. It really added to this tone that I enjoy with Brandon Sanderson. A little bit of humor that lightens the mood from really serious things going on. Next on the list of 5-star reads, it is the 2023 release Yellowface. This is another satire. As I mentioned earlier, my love of satire has really been unlocked this year. So that's another one. Please comment down below if you know books known for satire, because that's a tone I really enjoy. But I loved the social commentary of this one, layered on with that tone. So good and twisted. The worst narrator ever. Like, you are not rooting for this main character. She's not likable, and gosh, I don't know if she learns much. But this was very thought-provoking and entertaining. 5 stars, very easy for Yellowface. The next 2 books are also from the same series. I read A Dangerous Collaboration and A Murderous Relation, both from the Veronica Speedwell series, which I am completely up to date on after starting earlier this year. I really enjoyed this Victorian mystery series. Each book has its own contained storyline with a mystery that Veronica Speedwell and her beau Stoker are trying to unravel. But it's really this overarching storyline, a lot with Veronica, but also with their relationship, that I'm really enjoying reading. And these were 2 of my favorites from the series this year. The next 5-star read really charmed me this year. That book is Convenience Store Woman. And this is a literary fiction that celebrates joy in the mundane or the ordinary. Because this woman works at like a Circle K and she doesn't understand why people think that's so weird, because she loves it so much. She's so passionate about it. She's so good at it. And she doesn't understand why people just can't be happy for her. Really enjoyed this read. Very, very short, but I recommend it for everybody. Any Man by Amber Tamblyn was a 5-star read that was kind of difficult to read. This is a thriller that takes a spin on SA, where the victims are men instead of women, and how society reacts to them, how this whole culture approaches this topic, how the media approaches it. Very disturbing, but very, very relevant, thought-provoking, and insightful. Tress of the Emerald Sea was another 5-star read this year from Brandon Sanderson. I thought this one was very imaginative. I love that it's a nautical fantasy, but that doesn't mean the ocean is made out of water. I also loved our main character was very kind and hardworking, intelligent, strategic. There was a twist in this I did not see coming. Cruel Seduction by Katie Robert is book 5 from the Dark Olympus series, which is a dark romance series inspired by Greek mythology, but it is not fantasy, even if Storygraph kind of counts it as such, which drives me mad. No magic involved. The gods are like political figures. And in this story, we follow a couple and their marriage of convenience. kind of like an enemies to lovers, marriage of convenience kind of trope. I love this one. This is probably my second favorite in this series. Wicked Beauty still is like god tier. But Cruel Seduction was very good, very entertaining. I was really invested in the chemistry of our characters. I enjoyed the plot, and it's getting very political now. So this overarching plot has me really excited to pick up the next book in the series, which doesn't come out until 2024. A Psalm for the Wild Built and A Prayer for the Crown Shy is a duet I really enjoyed, and it kind of surprised me because I think these two books are classified as sci-fi because we follow a monk and a robot, and the robot is trying to understand what humans need to be happy. I think what was really magical about these books is just that magic in the ordinary, the kindness, the love, the connection. This is something to read if you really want to feel good and escape for a little bit, feel grateful for the small things. So these were both 5 stars. The Wishing Game is a literary fiction I read this year that really just made me feel warm and fuzzy. I cried, but I cried from like pure joy. Such a charming story inspired by Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, but it was a lot more realistic. Instead of a chocolate factory, we have a children's author who's giving away one book for a fan of his work that can sell it to a publisher or do whatever they want to do with it. We have a dynamic duo that you're really rooting for, and this book is probably shorter than I would like it to be. I would like things to be fleshed out a little bit more, but I was just so entranced by this world and by the characters and the connections they had. So much kindness in one book, found family. All Roads Lead Here is a contemporary romance that I reread this year, so I already knew it was going to be 5 stars, so maybe this is cheating. I don't care. I love the small town. I love the grumpy sunshine. This is like peak grumpy sunshine. I love the found family. I love the unique family structure, something non-traditional. There was just so much. There's a mother-daughter relationship here that made me sob. So much going on for All Roads Lead Here. Easy 5 stars, but I knew that already. The Weight of Blood is a YA horror that is a retelling of Carrie by Stephen King. I love the spin on this and the added substance and depth as it explores racism and how that presents itself in this small town, and they have a segregated prom. Very interesting book that just had so much meaning to it, so much relevance, but also that horror that you're really rooting for because you really want the vengeance in this situation. I went into the horror book House of Hunger thinking that it was a vampire story, but that's not necessarily the case, so I was really impressed by how unique this was. We follow a blood maiden who is hired by this rich lady who needs to drink her blood to survive. So kind of vampire adjacent, but this story went in a direction I did not expect. It was a page turner. I finished it really quickly because I was just dying to see what would happen next. Really was surprised and felt this was very unique. The Song of Achilles was a reread for me in 2023. Now when I originally read it, I think I rated it 3 stars because I was like, okay, cute romance, tragic story, whatever. But I reread it from a new perspective, and truth be told, reading it in Greece probably had something to do with it, but this retelling of Achilles' story from the Iliad was a lot different. I think having the right expectations going into this reread and not expecting some feel-good love story, but expecting just a profound bond and maybe an unlikable, selfish character that I wasn't expecting to root for this time made it a lot more enjoyable. There's something to be said about having the right expectations going into a book. Next, let's talk about The Will of the Many. Now, this is a 2023 fantasy release I rated 5 stars, but I didn't always enjoy the reading experience. It took me a really long time to read. First of all, okay, the font in the book is like itty bitty, where like I actually had trouble seeing it. I read most of it on my Kindle, which was nice because I got to increase the font size. But it's also because the magic system is very complex. I had very little idea what was going on most of the time. It was very difficult for me to visualize some of the things that were described to us. And the political system was really, there was a lot going on. There was a lot going on. But what I enjoyed about this one was our main character, who was very kind. He led with kindness, always had the best intentions, incredibly smart, very strategic, and he's in an academic setting that I really adored, because even though he's unnaturally good at everything for like 17 years old, he's learning that just because he's the best doesn't mean he's going to excel. And he has to strategize other ways to get ahead, to get what he wants. And there's a lot of competing priorities here. A lot of things going on, like I said. So this one, like I said, difficult experience at times, but it did not leave me. I was dreaming about it at night and still thinking about that cliffhanger at the end. And even though it kind of went a direction I don't normally love, I'm hoping it'll work out because of all the really interesting things going on in this book. The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches is a cozy fantasy book about a young woman who is a witch, and she goes to tutor these much younger witches in how to control their powers. What I loved about this one was the found family, the kind of charming, mischievous children, even though I don't normally like bratty kids in books. But I liked the connection of these guys, I think maybe because of their vulnerability with their powers and their isolation and their loneliness. And this just had really good, wholesome, feel-good vibes. Let's talk about yet another 5-star read from Brandon Sanderson this year. I'm talking about Warbreaker. Now, this was an easy 5-star for me because the plot was very engaging. We have this impending war, we have this king who's marrying off his daughter to this like evil god king. You're kind of worried what's gonna happen. The other sister goes to save her. So I really liked the plot, and that was engaging, but it was the tone and the added sarcasm from some of our characters, in particular 2 of them, that really made the magic of this book for me. Really loved their perspectives, but all the characters were really compelling to read about. How they were all in this kingdom, experiencing these same events together, but they all had different perspectives, different ways of viewing what was going on, and very unique characters. So everything really worked for me in Warbreaker. Fireborn and Flamefall are 2 books from the Aurelian Cycle trilogy. This is a YA fantasy trilogy that, if I didn't read that our main character was 16 years old, would not even classify this as YA, because it was so political. There was so much maneuvering going on with the government that was really, really fascinating, very engaging. So I just picture this as like a postgraduate school where the students learn how to ride dragons, fight wars and everything, because I can't imagine like any government giving over control of the military to like a bunch of 16-year-olds. So we'll just pretend these dragon riders are like in postgraduate studies. But I liked the characters, I liked the chemistry between them, I liked where the plot went, I liked the dragons. It wasn't incredibly magic heavy outside of the giant fire-breathing reptiles, but really, really enjoyed these books. Okay, so we have gone through 40 of my 5-star reads in 2023. I have 3 left. Spy the Lie is a nonfiction book written by CIA agents that tells you how to identify if someone is being untruthful. Now, after reading it, I don't know if I can detect if someone is lying. I think more than anything, I'm more paranoid of being falsely accused of lying because of all the different ways this is identified. But what I appreciated about this book is how they cover really interesting examples of criminals and actual like CIA interrogations, but also everyday conversations where you can identify lies, talking to your spouse, talking to potential employees, addressing your kids if you think they're lying. I really like how this made it relatable to like the everyday person like myself. Invisible Women is a nonfiction book about data bias, and it blew my mind of all the things I didn't know. I'm both enlightened and terrified and dying for more information. I think this book should be required reading in schools. Easy 5 stars because I'm like pushing it on everyone, and I think now on a weekly basis, I am telling people I come across about things I read in this book, and I'm like trying to push it on them. I want them to read it. So this book was very impactful to me. I'm going to remember this for a long time. The last book on this list of 5-star reads for 2023 is Laziness Does Not Exist. I picked this nonfiction up because I'm very anti-hustle culture. I believe in working hard, sure, but I think we've kind of gone off the rails a bit with this whole hustle culture thing. And this one really talks about how you can be more productive, how you can be more creative if you just kind of like back off a little bit and relax. How we put so much pressure on ourselves that we think or we're perceived as being lazy, but we really got to stop doing that. So this one was great about setting boundaries, but it wasn't as self-helpy as I was expecting it to be. I love the studies that we covered. I love the things that I learned, and I definitely want to buy myself an edition of this and highlight the crap out of it and annotate it because there are a lot of good beneficial things in it. Those are the 43 books that I rated 5 stars in 2023. Such a wide variety of genres. Like going through that list makes me just amazed at all the things I've been able to read. And even like looking at these shelves and seeing them back behind me, what I've read, it really blows my mind. But I am dying to hear from you in the comments down below. What book surprised you this year? Maybe you rated it 5 stars when you weren't expecting much. Maybe it was a genre you don't normally read or a subject you don't normally read. I'm dying to know. But it has been a fantastic year. Thank you for hanging out with me all year throughout these 5 stars and the 2 stars and everything in between. Happy reading to you. I will see you in the next video.